Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Critical Role's Vox Machina Origins Season 2. Not too shabby. Look, I reviewed the first couple of issues, met some of the worst possible, most toxic freaking fans in the world, think that somehow you're supposed to watch every episode before you review a comic book. No, it's called Comic Book University, not Critical Role University, so, pay attention. Anyway, enough with the toxic fans. How about us real fans of comic books, and even some of you fans from Critical Role? Go and check this one out. This is a huge improvement over the first series. I'm going to get more into that in a little bit. First, let's talk about who are the people who actually made this huge improvement and why it's not anybody's fault necessarily. It is what it is. So, story, Matt Mercer; script, Jody Hauser; art, Olivia Sampson; Masasik doing the colors. The letters are done by Ariana Maher, and the cover art, Fiona Staples. Man, you got some serious people doing this work here. Doesn't look like there are any variant covers that I can see. Then again, I might not be seeing it, but I don't think you really need much more than that. And this is a Dark Horse imprint. Now, I remember a little bit about what happened in the previous season, the previous series, the first 2 or 3. I think I only reviewed 3 issues, whatever. There was a baby who was stillborn or almost still, something to that effect. I got various people saying different things in very mean ways, whatever. But anyways, there was some baby who had to be sacrificed to the swamp. And I think that's the baby that's here. It's some giant-sized baby. I guess they were able to kill it in the previous issue, because in this issue, this is issue 1, and it's like, what, they kill it with one swipe of something? I figure it would have been a lot harder than that, but whatever. This the big Goliath decides to take him down. And yeah, that was fun, but I thought it would be more than that, so I guess it's just, I don't know. They must have solved it in the previous series. That's got to be what it is. If not, then this was a boring takedown. Anyway, Grog was the guy, and he's this awesome guy in the front cover, and love the design of this guy. Let's see. Basically all that happens is he winds up disappearing. Somehow he completely acts out of character. He's not drinking his ale. He disappears in the middle of the night. His friends, who are actually pretty good friends for people who barely just met. I mean, this is an origin story for not for the individuals per se, but for the team, how the team actually met. We saw them all most of them start to meet in the previous issue, or the previous run. Some of them were already together, but this is how the team as a whole comes together. In this issue, they're pretty friendly. They're good. They've successfully survived an adventure, won the mission, got some gold for it, and they're partying and whatnot. And this seems to be like the day after. So the idea that these guys even give enough squirts, I wouldn't give 2 squirts personally, but they're giving 2 squirts to try and go out and try and see, is this guy lost? Turns out that he's actually got some family out here-ish, some gnomes hanging out with a Goliath. Of course, that makes perfect sense. So they go and track down this family, and turns out there was some grandfatherage there who he helped them out and back and forth. So there's actually a backstory to this character. Okay, cool. I don't know if he's actually the most interesting character. He's definitely the most interesting looking character, so there's that. Again, I'm judging this based on comic books. That's what I do. I'm not interested in... I've watched 3, maybe 3.5 episodes of the Critical Role show before. It was a long time ago. Couldn't tell you anything about what I remember from the show. But yeah, that's it. So this, from what I recall from the previous season, without going back and looking at my reviews or digging out those comic books from my bin, the previous one, I forget the name of the guy who did it. It's not important. I don't want to name people who in my opinion didn't do a good job, but he's not actually a comic book guy. Because of the success of Critical Role, they were able to get into Dark Horse Comics. That's awesome. Not an easy thing to do, Not too easy to get into a place like Dark Horse and actually keep your characters, mind you. Image is the only one able to do that usually. But that being said, they were able to get their comic into Dark Horse Comics. That's awesome. You're in good company with characters like the Predator, the Aliens, the Terminator, all that good stuff. I think they still have the license to RoboCop. And they no longer have the license to Conan, but like that's the kind of things that Dark Horse usually gets. Those amazing freaking characters that are on the fringes. And this would be one of those. Critical Role is on the fringe of being just like the in thing. This is the first time that people have ever watched a Dungeons and Dragons game, Twitch or not. Twitch be damned as far as I'm concerned. It's not about Twitch. It's about this show. If they put this show on YouTube, if they put this show on whatever, people would find the show and people would watch the show. Daily Motion is what I was thinking. So it's important to try and capitalize on its popularity now and try and find other mediums to get people to come in. Now, the previous series was not the way to do it. It absolutely was not the way to do it. Toxic fans are certainly not the way to do it. I'm talking like Star Wars, The Last Jedi, whatever those episodes were, those movies were, that kind of toxicity. But definitely getting the medium out there. Now, you know that you've reached success when you've got somebody the likes of Jody Houser willing to jump on the story. I wouldn't say I've forgotten about Critical Role, but I'd all but forgotten about Critical Role until I started following Jody Houser, who, not too long ago started to become really big. She's become a name in comic books right now, writing a bunch of stuff for Marvel, still writing stuff for Marvel. And I don't know if she asked or was asked to write this story for Critical Role. I know the story's by Mercer himself, but she did the script for it, and in all reality, that's something that storytellers can't do. Look, anybody who's played Dungeons & Dragons before, more specifically, anybody who's DM'd Dungeons & Dragons or any of the other role-playing games out there before, you know that a Dungeon Master, even a player, but especially a Dungeon Master, is a storyteller. But are any of us actually writers? There's a big difference, a huge difference. Don't believe me? Try writing your stories down. Watch what happens. Jody Houser is a hell of a writer. So her doing this brings a certain level of credibility outside of the general fan base, that rabid fan base for Critical Role. And that's a good thing. Just the idea that I started following Jody Houser on Twitter, I start getting all those, feeds coming in. Oh, Critical Role is trending now. I'd never see that if I wasn't following Jody Houser, because there's nobody else that I'm interested in following who actually watches Critical Role religiously and gets involved in whatever, and tweets about it and whatnot. So, legitimately, that is probably one of the best things that's happened, and only time will tell. But having Houser on this really lends credibility to it. Aside from that, I think that the art has improved from the previous issue. I can recognize things a little bit better. I can understand what's going on a little better. I remember I had some minor complaints about it's hard to tell what's happening. Mind you, since I'm coming as more of an outsider than anything else, I don't understand what's happening as I'm looking at this painting, this picture, whatever it is that they're showing me. I did not have a single one of those problems in this issue. So I'm stating this right here, potentially, all right? This, for me, actually for most people, military and comic books go hand in hand together, like peanut butter and jelly. Anybody in the military can tell you that. It's true. We've all seen somebody, or we were the people who read comic books while we were in the military because they're really easy to get your hands on, and you send us anything, we're probably going to read it and enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? I'd read a freaking Popeye magazine if I'm stuck out in freaking Hamburg waiting for something to happen. God forbid if you're in the middle of freaking Afghanistan or something. Why do I bring that up? Because another thing that's really closely associated is Dungeons and Dragons and comic books. The most logical cross-pollination for spreading the word for Critical Role, and that's the only way this is going to spread. Toxic fans will destroy that, mind you. The only way to spread this is to cross-pollinate ideas, and one of the ways to do that would be to get into comic books, because comic books then branch out into other things also. By putting this in comic book form, I believe, and maybe I'm just prejudiced because I'm a comic book guy, I believe that comic books, having Critical Role in a comic book is better for getting this into, more of a, like, let's say maybe doing an animated series, or God forbid an actual live action series, because it could happen. Maybe something like this going on an Amazon Prime or a Netflix or whatever, something like that. Putting it in comic book form today, right now, that's the way to do this. Dude, there are people who didn't even realize that there's a Gamergate. You know what I'm saying? People who are just learning there's a Gamergate and Comicsgate and stuff like that in Bloomberg News. This is like, what, this month or late last month? Meanwhile, comic book guys knew this stuff for going on, what, 4 years now? So the comic books are definitely the way to, you look at Infinity War and Endgame and stuff like that, Black Panther, you name it. You want to get something onto the big screen. You want to get something with some massive popularity. The way to do it is comic books. Everything will branch out from there. So, fantastic idea. I'm really glad they stuck with this. Getting Jody Houser on this was perfect, because I don't believe that, honestly, Jim Zub would be the next name that I would suggest for this. And even then, I don't think that Zub would be as good at this as Houser. That's not a rub on Zub. I love that rhymes. Unintentional. Rather, it's a Houser for Houser. I'm not even going to try. Good job at Jody Houser. Anyway, we're done. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.